Welcome, everybody. We have another virtual fireside chat here as part of our virtual open house. I've been taking just a minute at the beginning of these to sort of explain the virtual open house concept. Obviously, amidst the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of events and conferences have been canceled. We wanted to find a space to recreate some of the conversations that would have been had at those events. So that's what was the impetus for creating this virtual open house. We've done a number of these fireside chats, as we're calling them now. Today, we've got Craig Novack, account executive, with us to talk about digital transformation in financial services, how to make it work for you. Craig, let's just start off with you giving us a run through your background. And if you could just talk a little bit about the different industries you've worked in and the similar ways that you've seen technology transform them. Obviously, emerging technologies are transforming industry after industry. I think you've had a lot of firsthand experience to that. That'd be interesting to share.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So my background, I've been selling selling tech and into financial services, insurance, legal, corporate legal departments, law firms, gosh, for probably 15, 16 years now. And yeah, we've seen it all. I've seen technology move quite a bit across the spectrum to obviously much more automation and some really exciting things that are starting to emerge out there. Now, I was working with a lot of organizations that kind of viewed themselves, or a lot of organizations departments inside of organizations that kind of viewed themselves as, I'm the expert. You got lawyers, you got financial advisors, you've got insurance claims, insurance folks, risk managers, those folks that really kind of view themselves as they're bringing a lot to the table, and they certainly do from the standpoint of expertise and experience and that type of approach or that type of view is very tough to then replace with technology. So those departments, those types of groups over the years, what I've seen is obviously they've come on board, right? Where it's, hey, you know what? We get it. We got it in the past. A lot of companies thought, hey, you know what? That's a separate group. They've got that expertise. Let them kind of run as they see fit. But now they've kind of brought it and come sort of full circle, I guess more 180 to say, we need to do some of the same that other departments inside our own organization are being asked to do, which is what really technology does a lot of, where it's, let's reduce costs, let's drive out manual processes, reduce risk, make things run much more efficiently. And now that those groups are on board, are being asked to do the same things, you're starting to definitely see, especially within the last 5 to 6 years, of those types of departments and organizations really grabbing onto technology to see where it can fit, not eliminate their expertise by any means, but see where they can complement and work closely with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Even in marketing, like we see that, right? It just, how technology can help just keeps creeping in more and more. And we used to think like there are these areas that, technology can't really help at all. And I agree, it doesn't replace the work people are doing, but we start to see it can continue to help in new ways as that technology.
Yeah, and those groups tend at that point to have quite a bit of pull and leverage because they're closely involved with protecting the organization or driving revenue. And so they hold a lot of weight into opinions on what can be done. And at some point there's been a shift, and there's definitely much more need to drive in some of the emerging technologies to help them do their job better. Or in some respects, just make the organization more efficient.
Yeah. So let's shift to financial services then from that. So obviously financial services too is having a lot of digital disruption that's having a transformative impact. Can you walk us through a few of the ways that emerging technologies are making an impact there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've seen it all, again, especially within the last 5 years, as I mentioned. I mean, robo-advisors, new apps, payment apps, blockchain, AI, machine learning. I mean, it's endless, the amount of technology that is out there. Really what I've seen and kind of my approach when working with organizations is really saying, what goals do we look to address? And it really kind of breaks it down into, is it a better response time that we need? Do we need to optimize cost? Is it a new revenue stream that we possibly can gain? Is there a competitive advantage that we can gain from that? How do we then, of course, overall reduce risk of the organization, make everybody feel more comfortable that we don't have to worry about the data breaches and making sure that there's security around there. So those things are really top of mind for the organizations trying to understand where is technology going to fit? How do I make an impact on the organization? So the organizations where I've seen that happen, they're looking to drive into some of those things I just mentioned. There's also a level of more of the easier path on some level to say where, from a overall manual standpoint, that's sometimes the quick win, right? So let's figure out ways, how can emerging technology help drive out a lot of the manual effort that my organization is doing? The frontline folks, they spend a lot of time, let's create reports manually. Let's enter information into another system manually. Let's take some of that mundane, low-level tasks out of the picture. The goal here is not from thinking about where the impact happens. The goal generally, it certainly can happen to say, hey, where can we eliminate masses of people doing this manual effort? More so what I've seen is, where can I better focus my staff's time? Where can technology fit in to be that piece, another piece of the puzzle inside my department? So if I can drive out a lot of that manual effort, let's let machine learning, artificial intelligence do some of that work. Let me connect information to another system. How can I make those two things jive together so ultimately those that were doing that manual effort, we can reassess where can we best use that staff? Where can they become more valuable? Where are they going to be doing more analytical work? Can they work closer with the business lines? Can they work closer with our customers? How can we bring that all together so technology does some of that low-level tasks, and then you can still allow your employees to do much more of the touch points within the organization externally? That way, you've got a much more efficient organization, and over the course of time, you'll see those results with more revenue, better retention, less risk, all those things that technology generally does, are kind of what I talked about before. This time, then you can start to see, where can I continue to drive technology inside the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting. We even talk about that with like Ascent Solutions, how it's like this mix of obviously machine learning, AI technologies, but also like human domain expertise, because like one should really exist without the other, right? They have to sort of be coupled together, both for the solutions we create, but then also, financial services that are using technologies to help them with things.
Yeah, I mean, from the Ascent standpoint, the goal, is a lot of that manual effort. It's like, let's, why, the key here is, this is not rocket science by any means, but technology doesn't get tired. Humans get tired. Technology works on the weekends. Technology works at night. They're working 24 hours a day. And it's going to serve up, your hope in intention, the way the Ascent products work is we're going to serve up to things that are specific to you. So you don't have to sift through it, which becomes more manual. But the more granular you can get with the work that technology does, more efficient everyone becomes, and ultimately creates a better environment. You get more people, employees get more engaged. Again, better response to customers, internal, better response to leadership. And then what I've also seen is then organizations, the champions that do this type of work, look great for the rest of the organization as well. And that's sometimes overlooked too, right? It's like, let's put in something that's going to give me tangible results. Those tangible results are going to make you look great, because that's what people want to do. So that feeds up to leadership. You look great, but at the same time, you're doing some really great things for the organization.
So let's jump a little further down the line there. So then when firms, or organizations are vetting different technological solutions to try and figure out how they can help them, that can be like a tedious, difficult process. Can you walk through some of the ways to do that efficiently, to make sure your final solution is going to be the right fit, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that the important thing is thinking through, how do I go about making sure that everything is in alignment inside of the organization? So again, there's tons of technologies out there. There's tons of ways that organizations implement technology. I've seen good, I've seen bad. But the key is making sure, and this is where I've seen it most successful, if organizations can answer a couple of really important questions. And we hope that organizations are doing this. I've seen them not do it. But hey, does the technology align, or how does what you're looking to do from a technological standpoint, how does that align to organizational goals, departmental goals? How does that fit into the whole scheme of the organization? Obviously, leadership's going to want to know that. If you can make that tie back, that's going to be a big win. Is there buy-in at all levels? And we can, there's ways to make sure that is accomplished. Does leadership understand their role in some type of implementation? Because including them from the top down is always super important. And are the right resources available? You know, that gets into some of the logistics that organizations need to ask themselves. Is this the right time relative to the resource allocation that I'm needed to do to adequately and efficiently implement what I'm looking to do? You know, and of course, is timing right? Yeah, I think what's going on in our world today has messed up timing quite a bit for, I'm sure, projects across corporate America. You know, can't always predict that, but you know, making sure timing is right relative to a new product release or other technology that's coming in. And then thinking about potential external forces or existing external forces that may have an impact on you. And again, what we're dealing with today is something that we saw a little bit from a planning standpoint, but other internal, external forces, just planning from a contingency standpoint to make sure that doesn't derail what you're looking to do and accomplish. So where I've seen organizations be most successful with their implementation, especially with when we're talking about these emerging type technologies and new things that, you know, at this point, it's not widespread. It's not necessarily every organization is using some emerging technologies. Getting all these types of questions answered and clarity for the rest of the organization about the answers to these questions certainly make them more helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like another challenge too is like there's this trust gap sometimes, right, between what the technology provider is saying that their solution can do and what the financial firm, whoever's onboarding it, thinks is actually capable of. Part of that, I think, is technology can seem like this black box. Sometimes it's just people don't actually trust that it can deliver the way it can. How do firms reconcile that? How can they evaluate whether the tech is working as it says it's going to work and make sure that they can trust it?
Well, I think it's a great question because, again, you see this type of this lack of understanding or this lack of trust that builds, especially, again, with emerging technologies quite a bit. One thing I want to make point, and it kind of relates back to the last question, is thinking about where organizations fail. So if you want to make sure that you don't fail, obviously there's always going to be a lot of factors that work into that. But then thinking about how do I then vet out my vendors, vet out what are they promising? So making sure that the scope and the comfort level of the technology is in line with the comfort level of the organization as a whole. I've worked with organizations that have this sort of pie in the sky thought process where I want technology to work from the beginning to end of my process. I want it to be no touch. I want the artificial intelligence to make decision for my highly paid employees that have been making those decisions. And that's a tough call because, one, it usually costs a lot of money over the course of years. You're going to get pushback from your internal audience, especially the ones that may not be happy about the fact that you're taking that out of their hands. So that takes time. And part of that is vetting out and feeling comfortable that the vendor is going to deliver, which then can relate to making all your stakeholders in the leadership, your users, IT, your project managers, all feel comfortable that what's going to be delivered, that everyone's going to be successful. Because let's face it, if technology doesn't deliver on what it promises, everybody suffers. Everybody's image is a little tarnished as well when you're working on a project that ultimately fails. We want to avoid that. But when we think about vetting out technology vendors and making sure that you trust what they're doing, this really comes back to the adage of what type of proof of concepts can we do? What type of pilots? What type of references can you provide me that I can utilize? Who can I call? I would also suggest calling somebody that didn't have a successful implementation with that vendor and see what happened there, and then go back to the vendor and say, hey, what did you all learn from that? How would you have avoided that? How have you avoided that in the future? Ask about cost-benefit analysis I know a lot of organizations have those built for themselves, especially larger organizations. Sometimes the smaller or medium to larger size organization may not have it built out specifically for different types of technology. So I would certainly encourage organizations to ask the tech vendor, do you have a cost benefit analysis that you've used with your customers? Can I see the results of other customers that you've worked with? Obviously, they can anonymize that if necessary, but let me take that and let me compare it. Those are the type of things that just start to build better relationships with your vendor, better comfort level with what that it's going to be delivered, but also make sure that there's a clear path past the pilot on what's going to happen as well. As long as everyone's clear that once we get done with this pilot, we're going to do these 5 things from an assessment standpoint, we're going to engage these 4 groups, and then we're going to put this into production or get this project started. That way you don't lose any of that momentum that occurs now that you've proven out that this tech vendor can do what I say they're supposed to be able to do. Now, as long as then you start to think about another approach of maybe this is a slow roll or a slow approach or a phased approach as well. So you feel comfortable about the tech vendor. Now let's take this slow roll of being a bit more thoughtful around, let's phase this out over the course of time. Let's start to build a success criteria. That way leadership's in alignment, leadership feels comfortable, the staff feels great about what's going on. And ultimately what you're going to see is much more overall satisfaction with your comfort level that this is accomplishing 95% or 100% of the things that we thought the technology was going to do. And now we've got a better relationship with the vendor. We work closely. We've got we've got the ear of the organization. We allow so you can say, hey, I want the system to do this. I know organizations, tech vendors can't always promise that they're going to do that right away. But the reality of it is, the closer you are to the organization, the more weight you're going to be able to pull and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of functionality. And you can start to have some input, and they're going to look to you for input on, what the direction of the product may look like.
I feel like that slow roll process can be good for cost too, right? Sometimes the cost can be prohibitive, and especially if you're not sure of the actual benefit of it yet. But if you just sort of start with starter tier and gradually work your way up, you can start to see whether you're actually able to offset the cost as promised or not.
Yeah, I've seen it happen both ways. And look, some organizations are under the gun and they need to make sure that they get whatever they need to put in place right away. But where I've really seen technology, when it's thoughtfully planned and done over the course of time, it becomes a much more successful rollout. There's way less issues with staff, with usability, with their ability to get into the system and feel comfortable with it. And what you're also able to do is you're able to start to build that level of success that once that's fed up to the stakeholders, executive sponsorship, that looks fantastic to organizations because we're doing this much more thoughtful. And then over the course of time, when you feel even more comfortable with the organization, then you can start to roll out the rest of the capabilities in a much quicker manner. But this, Marcus, this also brings me to an important point, thinking back around how do we make sure that we vet out the tech vendor? How do we avoid failing with emerging technologies? One of the most important things that I think gets overlooked often is organizations that feel like they need to put in a solution right away, and it ultimately becomes a one-trick tool. It's going to do exactly what it's going to need to do because it hits a need and it accomplishes what we need to do, and the price is right, I'm going to put it in place. And so what happens, and I've seen this happen a lot, and I've been on the end of, hey, I need to put whatever I was working with at the time in place because my last solution didn't work. But the important thing with these solutions, especially emerging technologies, point solutions can be great, but that point solution better have the capabilities or should have the capabilities to grow into something bigger and better. Because what's going to happen? We know needs of organizations are going to change. We know that your needs are going to evolve. It's always happens. And so the last thing you want to do is have to go back to leadership, go back to the budget process and say, I need to put something new in because what I just put in isn't effective for us anymore. So always make sure that technology that you're putting in place has the ability to expand, allow you to grow into more capabilities, has the ability to interconnect with other systems, to exchange data, because at the end of the whole process, that way you can grow into this much more robust use of technology instead of having to start over from scratch.
Or have like a bunch of various solutions that aren't talking to each other, right? You've got like separate technologies, separate companies that you're trying to work together, get some kind of end-to-end compliance process, but they're not cohesive, they don't mesh, and then that's an issue too.
Yeah, that happens all the time in the Ascent world. It's, we're dealing with risk and compliance, and they'll often say, I've got a monitoring tool over here, I've got something that's giving me a feed of information from the regulator over here. I've got all my policies and procedures in a spreadsheet, in a shared drive that I have on a shared drive inside the organization. None of that information talks to each other. So if there's a way, and it doesn't talk to each other, one, by design, two, we put in something that monitors all of our transactions, but it doesn't allow for that information to go anywhere else. It all has to reside in one place. So if you can have a solution that allows you to do something small to begin with or something medium to begin with, great. But as long as it has that time.
Yeah, so I think you're cutting out at the end there, Craig. Hold on a second. Let's see if your internet picks back up. Let me know if you can hear me.
Cut out, Marcus.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're back now. Yeah, you cut out at the end there, but I think you're back. But yeah, I think your point was coming across. I want to just jump in the last couple of minutes here to something you referenced earlier, which is obviously we are in very unprecedented times, right? And it's derailed like literally everything. It's derailed our standard work process, or commutes, everything. Oh shoot! Looks like Craig. I think his connection dropped off. Oh, good. Sorry, Craig. You're back.
It's the working from home,
It's the working from home, right? Yeah. So I was just saying, I was setting you up for. We're in unprecedented times here, working from home. Various internet connections. It's derailed a lot of things, like you mentioned. It derailed onboarding various solutions, vetting different tech providers, that kind of stuff. If you're a company now in the midst of that process, how do you go about it? Do you put it off for a while? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, look, every organization is a little bit different. We get it, especially as Ascent, as a tech vendor, we've seen it all over the board. Some people are moving forward. Some others are saying, hey, we've got to see what the world looks like in another month, call us back. And we get it. We understand that this is unprecedented, and we don't know what the world's going to look like 2 months when all this starts to clear up, or 3 months or 6 months. What I can say, or what I've heard, is that it's going to take us a while to get back to normal. So I think every organization is a little bit different. But when it does get back to normal, some of those organization pressures are still going to be there. Those needs from goals and objectives that you're looking to accomplish that relate to your needs are still going to likely be there. So the key is, do you want to go back and say, I'm going to need more head?
I think you cut out on us again, Greg. Sorry, but let's see if you come back for a second. Are you back with us, Greg? Sorry. Okay, we'll try one more time to finish your thought there before we wrap up. So you were talking about how at a time when if you need to try and get more headcount, the difficulties in an environment like this.
Yeah, look, every organization is going to be a little bit different, but I think there's nothing wrong with spending time, and maybe this is the right time to start to analyze and assess and do some pilots and understand what the potential is for the organization. And if they say, hey, I'm going to pilot it, and 6 months from now, I'm going to put this in place, now I know. At least you're ahead of the game versus, when everything gets back to normal, everyone's calendars and responsibilities are going to continue to be bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. All right. So that said, assuming internet holds for a minute here, I'm going to open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to drop those in the chat or raise your hand. I can unmute you. While we wait for that, I'm just going to share in the chat our link to our open house page here. We've got a number of other open houses still coming up. A couple I wanted to highlight. On Monday, we're going to be talking to our VP of Data Science about creating data certainty in uncertain times. I'm excited about that one. Later in the week, we're going to talk about behind all good decisions, how risk and compliance can use data smarter. And then next week, we're going to be looking at some compliance use cases and best practices, looking at what different bank peers are doing, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So that said, let me just see if we have any questions here. Doesn't look like anything's come in. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Craig, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through this stuff. Internet difficulties aside and all that, I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Talk to you later. Bye.